The alien widow was sentenced to serve a human, yet found freedom in his kindness. The war had ended, but its echoes still lingered on the edge of the Orion frontier. Scars of burned colonies, broken fleets, and forgotten graves drifted in the silence between stars. On the barren moon of Veskara, humanity kept a single outpost, a listening station named Haven's Reach, run by one man, Captain Rian Holt. He was a veteran no one remembered, a technician too skilled to retire and too weary to return home. For 6 years, he lived alone beneath the faint light of 2 suns, watching the skies for signals that never came. Then the shuttle arrived. It descended without warning, small, silver, carrying the crest of the former enemy. From it stepped a figure in chains, a tall, slate-skinned woman, cloaked in shadow and silence. Her name, translated by the transport logs, was Saratal, widow of a fallen commander of the Zirathai Dominion. She had not come by choice. Her people's council had condemned her to serve under human authority for 10 cycles as penance for her late husband's crimes, a gesture of reconciliation, though both sides knew it was closer to humiliation. And so the universe placed her in the custody of a man who had once fought against her kind. Rian said little when she arrived. He simply pointed to a spare cabin, left her a set of tools, and returned to his consoles. The outpost was quiet, only the hum of solar converters and the wind that whispered through dust fields. There were no guards, no locks, no cruelty. Only silence and work. Sarah watched him from a distance. Humans were smaller than her kind, fragile in build, yet there was something unyielding in the man's calm. He did not command her, nor insult her heritage. He gave her tasks, tending to equipment, cataloging transmissions, repairing antennae in the storm. When she failed, he simply showed her again, patiently. When she succeeded, he said, "Good work," as though she were his equal. That, to her, was more disarming than any hostility. Weeks passed. The rhythm of labor softened the edges of memory. She began to understand why humans endured, they built order out of dust and meaning out of solitude. One evening, she asked quietly, "Why do you not hate me?" Rian did not look up from his tools. "Hate keeps the war alive. I came here to let it die." The storms of Veskara came without warning, electric tempests that could rip steel apart. When the largest of the season struck, power lines failed, and the main reactor went offline. Rian worked through the night, his suit battered by wind and static. Sarah watched from the shelter, knowing he could not survive the exposure for long. Something inside her, pride, guilt, or the strange warmth she did not yet name, broke open. She went after him, braving the storm to reach the relay tower. Together they fought the wind, hands bleeding on frozen metal, until the power grid reignited with a shuddering roar. In the aftermath, they collapsed inside the maintenance bay, covered in frost. He coughed, laughed once, and said hoarsely, "Guess the Dominion builds good engineers after all." She smiled faintly. "And humanity builds fools who do not know when to quit." It was the first time either had laughed in years. Peace, on Veskara, was built not in speeches but in gestures. They shared meals now, rationed stew and tea that tasted faintly of iron. She learned to mend human equipment, he learned the Zirathai language in halting phrases. They spoke of stars, of the homes they had lost, of the ghosts that followed them. Sarah discovered the outpost's garden, a dome of fragile earth plants grown under artificial light. When she touched the leaves, she felt something awaken in her that the Dominion had long silenced, gentleness. "Why do you keep these?" she asked one day. Rian looked at the small green shoots. "Because they shouldn't grow here. But they do. That's reason enough." From then on, she cared for the garden as if it were sacred. Months later, a signal reached Haven's Reach, a distress beacon from a civilian freighter caught in the storm belts. Rian prepared a rescue drone, but the electromagnetic surge made remote guidance impossible. Someone would have to launch the beacon manually from the surface ridge. The outpost's air was thin, the climb was lethal. Rian began to suit up without hesitation. Sarah stopped him. Your body will fail before you reach altitude. I've done worse. Let me. You're not under my command. Then call it freedom. She went. Through the station window, he watched her silhouette vanish into dust and lightning. The telemetry feed flickered, the beacon ignited, a single flare of blue light piercing the storm. The freighter escaped orbit, and Sarah staggered back to the base, breathless, alive. When he met her at the airlock, he said nothing. He simply bowed his head, the human gesture of respect. She returned it, awkwardly, but with sincerity. At the end of her sentence, the transport ship returned. A Dominion envoy arrived to collect her, bearing new insignia and cold authority. Your service term is complete, the officer declared. You are free to return to your people. Sarah looked around the quiet base, the hum of generators, the garden glowing in the light, the man who had treated her not as a prisoner but as a soul. Her voice was steady when she replied. My people are here. The officer protested, citing protocol and pride, but Rian intervened. She's free. Freedom means she chooses. The envoy left without her. Seasons passed. Haven's reach grew, a place once empty, now alive with life. Human and Zirathai engineers worked side by side, studying the storms, building shelters for new settlers. The war was no longer a wound but a story retold in peace. Sometimes Rian would stand by the observation window, watching the horizon glow. Sarah tended the garden nearby, humming in her own language, a melody that had once been a funeral song, now softened into hope. One evening, she said quietly. In my world, punishment means chains. Here, it meant learning to stand. Rian nodded. Then maybe we both served a sentence, and both were pardoned. Outside, lightning arced across the clouds like veins of light, and the two suns set over a horizon that no longer divided enemies. Years later, explorers arriving at Veskara would find a thriving research colony named Haven's Accord. Its founding monument bore only two symbols, a human hand and a Zirathai crest, carved side by side. Below them, an inscription read. Freedom is born not of conquest, but of understanding. And the legend of the widow who found freedom in kindness became a story told across both worlds. A reminder that even after the darkest wars, mercy can still rebuild the stars.